WVXU, right? Jim Nolan, you may know him, radio interviewer. Happy you could join us. Knock our socks off.
I'm going to throw lefty, sorry. That's all I got. All right. So just a quick background. I grew up in Northern Kentucky, but now I guess I've lived in Ohio probably just a tiny bit longer than I've lived in Kentucky by just a month or two, so now I guess I'm an official Buckeye. But growing up, I always knew that there was cool shit to do in Cincinnati. But I always thought you had to go looking for it. I kept hearing people tell me time and time again, there's really cool stuff to do, but you just gotta find it. It's really hard to find. But I found out that Cincinnati is fucking awesome. From Fairfield to Florence, from Batesville to Batavia, Greater Cincinnati has so much amazing cool shit to do, and it's really not all that hard to find. Did you know that the oldest telescope in the United States is in Cincinnati? And there's 1,000 other factoids that are about the city that are just amazing. Look at the people that have been in this room tonight. We have mathematicians and magicians and pirates and filmmakers and just all the other people that haven't even presented are just fucking amazing. All of you. This is just a great place to live. And so I have the unique pleasure of working for WVXU, and I do an online arts and culture program, and I like to quote LL Cool J and say, don't call it a podcast, called Local Exposure. And I get to interview people. And interviewing people is a lot like a chess game. You have to be prepared for what they're going to say, but you also have to kind of be able to be flexible, because you don't know what they're going to say exactly. So if they say something that throws you completely off your guard, you have to be ready to react and keep it going. Because it's not an interview, it's a conversation. And if you lose sight of that, then it becomes sterile and artificial. And this is the biggest challenge of all to a good interview. Because when someone walks into the studio and they sit in front of that mic and the red light goes on, they freeze. They're intimidated, they're scared to death. Even though it's recorded, even though I tell them it's gonna be edited, no matter what you say, it's fine. If you screw up, you can say it again. I do all the time. But I can't tell you how many times I'd ask somebody, oh wow, you've had amazing things happen to you in your life. Yes. And it just dies. So I discovered a great, wonderful tool that helps facilitate that conversation. And I like to call him Leroy. And Leroy will be coming up here in a second. But one of the reasons I discovered Leroy is because I want to tell you a story about how things go terribly wrong. Do you guys, anyone know Keith Maupin? Does anyone know who Keith Maupin is? Okay. There's Leroy. Leroy's my buddy. Leroy's about the size of my hand. And I can sit him on a table between us. There's a microphone on this end and a microphone on that end, and it's very inobtrusive, and it's just, I can just look the guy in the face and have a conversation. But anyway, back. Keith Maupin. I go visit him, talk to him. Usually I like to keep my interviews about 20 minutes, maybe 15. We talk for about an hour, hour and a half. And by the end, both of us are kind of tearing up because he has a very emotional story. And even though he's told that story 1,000 times to not just, little podunk WVXU, but the national news people. And it was a great interview. It was my favorite. And I get in the car, and I realize I forgot to push record. I am not making that up. So I went back to him the next day, and I said, this is what happened, and I'm really sorry, and I feel like an idiot. He's like, that's cool, we'll do it again. But about every 5 minutes or so through the interview, he said, you pushed that button, right? Yeah. So anyway, the point of this whole thing is that I want to tell you, not only that A, Cincinnati's fucking amazing, and B, that there are really cool things to do in this city, but C, there are amazing stories in every single person in this room, outside this room, and from all over the area. I've spoken with multimillionaires who have donated millions of dollars to charities and things like that. And I've spoken with homeless people who are just out of prison and trying to make their way back into society. But if you just give them a little time, a little attention, and a little respect, you can get a great story out of it. And I appreciate you giving me your time and your attention. Thank you.
Nicely done.